Hello, BookTube. All right, we're continuing with my 14K Q&A. This channel reached 14,000 subscribers, so we are doing a Q&A. The questions are wonderful, as always. Where did we leave off? Heather Gregg has a question. As 14K is a distant memory, congratulations on 14.2K. I know we shot right past 14K. And looking forward to 15K Q&A too soon. It's not going to happen at all. It's not going to happen at all. A question. How do you annotate your books? On first read through or second reading and using a pen, pencil, green crayon, what kind of annotations do you make? Do you write on the book itself or on a separate loose paper? I write on the book itself. And usually it's two layers of annotation. One is practical stuff. If there's any chance that I am going to review the book that I'm reading, then it's practical stuff. Where did Aunt Lulu first show up? What is the relationship between these two characters? You have to note that because you're not going to remember it. You're just not. Oh, dollars to donuts, you're going to be writing a review and need that information, and it's not going to be at your fingertips. It's easier with an ebook because you can just ask the ebook. But that's the first layer. And then the second layer is, oh, this was good, or oh, this is a contradiction, or something like that, or a little more substantive. And I do that in a lot of books. I do that a lot. Let's see here. Upper Norwood says, congratulations on the landmark. You've talked about how sub-vocalizing places a restraint on a person's reading speed. I must admit that I've done this all my life and find it hard to change. It is very hard to change. It is a very old habit. I am able to cut it out with effort, and while this certainly increases my speed, it feels like a fundamentally different experience. It is. It is a fundamentally different experience. That's why it takes so much time to retrain your brain. For example, P.G. Woodhouse's writing has a big emphasis on dialogue and first-person narration, and it seems to lose some of its charm when not sub-vocalizing. Okay. Well, if it loses charm for you, then don't do it. That's the whole point of this is for you to enjoy your reading, right? The sub-vocalizing you can just drop. If it doesn't work for you, you can just drop. But I want to point out what you already know if you're watching this channel. Do I strike you as someone who is who's experiencing less of the joy of P.G. Woodhouse than someone else, than someone who sub-vocalizes? I don't think I do. I think the joy in my eyes when I talk about him is pretty evident. That will survive. That will come back. It's just a question of learning it. That's all. But is there something to this, or do I just need more practice? There isn't anything to it. There isn't anything to your point that if you cut out sub-vocalizing, you lose some of the wonder or magic of a book. I firmly believe that there is nothing to that because I think that I am hungry for the wonder and magic of books, and I don't sub-vocalize. But you certainly need more practice. Everybody that I've talked to for years about sub-vocalizing says, well, I tried this for a whole week and I'm not seeing any results. Yeah, right, because you learned this habit when you were 2. So you've been doing it for decades. You're going to need some time to practice not doing it. Constantino666, congrats. I often find myself in reading slumps when I start reading a book and there's something wrong. The writing sucks usually, but not wrong enough to justify abandoning it at 1%. But it's an awful slog to get through 10 to 20% to make an informed decision whether it sucks or not, and I can DNF it. Though, like Michael K. Vaughan, I find it hard to DNF stuff. How do you handle this kind of thing? I feel like I should abandon books faster, but then when I do that, I'm afraid I might be rejecting good books. Also, how often do you DNF books? I know you read all the books you review. Are there books you decide you won't review and just abandon them? It very rarely happens. Very rarely. I read so much and I read so fast that I really can't anymore justify DNFing a book. Especially since a lot of books have surprised me at the end. Or towards the end. But I see your point. I understand your concern that you might not be giving the book enough time and you might be missing out on stuff. I think you should trust your own instincts. If you are let's say you're using percentages here, if you're 1 or 2% into the book and it's doing a small menu of annoying things to you, those same things, you keep barking your shins on the same problems with it, and you go a couple more chapters, a dozen more pages, and those things are still persistently happening, then you know it's going to be like that for the rest of the book. No book ever ascends to good writing, as you know that's going to be true. If that is a deal breaker, then let it break the deal. Definitely don't slog. Definitely don't stick around. It sounds like you're already cautious. The problem that I have with DNFing books, I've mentioned on this channel before, which is that it gives you a little dopamine rush to do. And that can be addictive on its own. I know there are people on BookTube who love DNFing a little too much. They want that little rush. And that should be, you should be cautious against that at all costs, because that's not legitimate at all. But it sounds like you are. So I wouldn't worry about it. I would trust your instincts. Jess Book Girl TV, congratulations. I have not posted much on here. Number 1, what 3 books would you take with you if you were stranded on a desert island? I did the Desert Island books with Sean T. Stanfest. I had 10 books to choose then. But big, all-encompassing books. As I mentioned on that video with Sean, cosmologies. So the Bible, of course, City of God by St. Augustine. Things like that. Bigger, larger things like that I can sort of live in. I would take those with me. Number 2, what author do you feel doesn't get much coverage on BookTube? Well, BookTube isn't the New York Times book pages, right? There's no coverage on BookTube. I don't think that way about BookTube. I don't think, why doesn't anybody talk about this author? I think, oh, I'm interested in who people are talking about. I don't view it as a map that the irregularities of which need correcting. There are authors that I don't hear anybody talk about on BookTube, but I don't want them to. If they don't want to organically, I don't want them to. Medieval authors, right? Great authors from the 1,000 years between the fall of Rome and the fall of Constantinople. A lot of those writers are among my favorites. Not many people on BookTube know about them or talk about them. Let's see here. Katrine Vieris, congratulations. Here comes the have you read question. Ooh, that's not good. That's not good. Those of you who are new, have you read questions are very bad. Have you read any Estonian authors? If you have, who were they? Which books did you read, and what did you think of them? Asking as an Estonian. Oh, that's fair. By the way, thank you for your channel. I really enjoy watching your videos. Been doing this for over a year now, I think. Well, I imagine a lot of people, I don't know a whole lot about Estonian literature. Estonians do, and they're very proud of it. There are 2 Estonian writers who get translated a lot. I think they're both called Jan. I'm sure that I've read them. I'm sure that I've read, something, maybe not even their works, maybe just something about them. It would entirely depend on the availability of an English language translation, and I don't often come across such things, so we can effectively say no. There are 2 names, they're right on the tip of my tongue, that I have a likelihood of having read something. I'm terrible with author names anyway, but it would come to me, but probably not. So if you have recommendations, feel free. Constantine666 is back with more questions. Any chance you would review more books in videos, like your video on the Great Hunt / Riddlemaster of Head? That I did it. For those of you who don't know what Constantinos is talking about, I did a February Fantasy Stories update, and I mentioned a couple of the books that I've been reading: The Great Hunt, the second book in the Wheel of Time series, and the Riddlemaster of Head, and I talked about them a little. As a February Fantasy Stories update, I talked about the books a little, and it must have struck a nerve, because I got a lot of emails from people saying, could you do more of that, please, on your channel? I thought I had done a lot of that on my channel, but that's something about those 2 books, that video seems to have struck a nerve. So maybe I should do more of that. Yeah, I will certainly consider it. I think you mentioned that you read a lot of classics in Latin. Do you still read books in the original, other languages as well, or do you stick with the translations? Well, that came up in an earlier question. I read all kinds of American book market translations. I find works in translation fascinating on their own, just as a kind of writing. I find them fascinating on their own. And I love seeing what the American book market crops up season by season. But going back, reading things in the original, it doesn't often happen. I feel right up to my eyeballs with just keeping up with books written in English in America in any given year. And that has slowly phased out. I did a lot more of that I did a lot more of that kind of reading when that was not my reading brief, when I didn't think this is how I want to shape my reading. And the more I wanted to shape my reading that way, covering new releases, the less space there was, the less bandwidth there was for anything else. Let's see here. What's your favorite heavy metal band? I don't have a favorite heavy metal band. And finally, what's really your reading goal for this year? The actual number. It's pretty big. It's take a normal person's healthy year-end reading goal and multiply it by 10. And that ought to do it. That'll probably get you close. KMM says, congrats, Steve, on 14K. Enjoying the library tour. Just wondering, Do you plan on doing the romance shelves this time around? Oh, yes, absolutely. I think last time you tried this, you skipped them. Either way, the tour is great. I will not be skipping. Absolutely not. And if, that the romance bookshelf that KMM is talking about here is floor to ceiling, full of mass market romances. It's hundreds and hundreds of books. So I know perfectly well, and a lot of you don't read romances and aren't interested in them at all, so I know perfectly well that for those days of the library tour, you just won't be watching. That's fine. It's fine by me. Maybe I'll put a notation in the title that we're still in the romance bookshelf so that you know when to come back. Kim M says, "Hi, Steve. Congratulations on 14K. I'm fairly new to your channel, so please forgive me if you have already answered my question. Who are your 5 favorite mystery authors and why?" Well, the why won't work because that's a long discussion. But Marjorie Allingham, Niall Marsh, Dorothy Sayers, P.D. James, Georgette Heyer, the Regency romance author, her mystery novels, I just love them. Absolutely love them. Writers like usually from the height of the golden age. Let's see here. CDNKRZ. Hey Steve, congrats on yet another milestone. If you were tasked to bring one out-of-print book back on the market, but it had to be a hit with audiences today, what would you choose? I was right with you until you said it had to be a hit with audiences. I don't have any idea how to do that, not how to gauge it, nor do I want to. I'm perfectly happy to not have an or in this stream. I'm perfectly happy to see what passion projects get reprinted every year anyway. Of course, there are books that I have read and really enjoyed and wish they were still available, but a lot of them are very niche. So, no, I have no idea what would appeal to audiences today. None whatsoever. Lou G says, "Congratulations. Would you consider doing another Trollop read-along? Please and thank you. It's a very good idea. We should be consorting with Lonely Trollops all year. Trollops that are not part of a series. I should revive that. Maybe this month. No, not in March. Not in March. You've got way too many read-alongs to do. But maybe April. Let's see here. Gareth Reeves. Hello, Steve. Well done on amassing a 14-strong coterie. My question concerns your marvelous end-of-year lists, which you have been making since 1990, and which have provided me with no end of entertainment. Aren't you nice? Are you able to provide a link to the 2011 lists? For some reason, they are the only ones I can't find, and believe me, I've tried many times. Off the top of your head for this video, do you recall what was number 1 on the fiction list? No, I do not remember off the top of my head. But 2011, those should still be out there. They should definitely be findable. I'll have, right now I have former booktuber David Murphy as a guest. I'll see if he can find it. His search abilities will be much better than mine. And I will make sure to make it visible somehow. Maybe I can port it over to, I have a website. I have stevedonahue.com as a website. Maybe I can port it over there so that it's really findable. And that's on Squarespace, and it's overseen, so it's nice and clean. It's not going to disappear. 2011. All right, I'll make a note of that. Harrison Recht. Hi, Steve. Thanks again for the opportunity to be involved with your channel. Number 1, I read that a new translation of Thomas Mann's stories is coming out shortly. How do you think his stories stack up compared to his novels? Yeah, that story collection is out already. And I like his stories a lot. His novels have tremendous Tolstoyan power. So, of course, I have a soft spot for them, for Buddenbrooks, and especially Magic Mountain. But I like the short stories, and I love that new edition. Number 2, do you recommend Desmond Seward's Popular Histories? Oh, yes. Oh, my, yes, absolutely. His book on the 100 Years' War is really good. And his biography of Henry V is probably the best biography of Henry V that I've ever read. And I think I've read them all, in English anyway. I definitely recommend him, absolutely. Marco Aurelio Silva. Congrats, Steve. 2 questions for you. Number 1, what are your favorite Latin American authors / books? It's a huge field, but my favorite is probably Mario Vargas Llosa. And my favorite book is a magical realism thing that he did, which in English is called Aunt Julia and the Scriptwriter. Tia Julia, a scriptorio. That's probably my favorite book of his. Number 2, can you recommend some short story collections? Yes, of course I can, yes. Oh, yeah, there are a whole shelf of them that you can get. The short stories of John Cheever, short stories of Eudora Welty, short stories of Flannery O'Connor, short stories of Frank O'Hara and John O'Hara. Yeah, there's tons and tons that are good. Hannah's Books. Congratulations. Do you have a favorite children's author, favorite biography of a children's author? I don't know that I have a favorite children's author. I don't think that I do. But what was that book? In the Great Green Room was a fairly recent biography of Margaret Wise Brown that I thought was really good. And the life that she wished to live. It's over on the shelf there. You saw it last time you were here. The life she wished to live about Marjorie Keenan Rollins was also. She's a children's author, right? The Yearling is a children's staple. That was really good. I love that book. Book, Songs, and Other Magic. Congrats, Steve. My question: if you have time, what what is your favorite Star Trek? Who would be, this should be, who would be your favorite Star Trek actor, actress, and what scene do you remember standing out that they were in? You know, out of all the people who've been in Star Trek all this time, you'd think it'd be Kate Mulgrew, because she's Katharine Hepburn commands a starship. But no, after all this time, I think the greatest utility player, the greatest presence on the screen in Star Trek is DeForest Kelley as Bones McCoy. I think it's a remarkably consistent, remarkably wonderful performance, just overall, from him. Even in recognized in movies that Star Trek fans don't like, even in, like for instance Star Trek V, where Kirk finds God, even then D. Kelly was really, really good. I'm going to say him. That's probably an outside answer. Flora should be reading. Congrats, Steve. BookTube wouldn't be the same without you. Well, I guess we'll never know, will we? Here are my questions. Number one, what did you think of Julian Barnes as Elizabeth Finch? I found it sort of underwhelming, but it did make me more curious to find about the figure of Julian the Apostate. I was kind of underwhelmed by it too. Julian the Apostate is a fascinating figure. You should read the novel Julian by Gore Vidal. You think you will really like it. Number two, speaking of which, do you think there may have been a point in time at the very beginning where Christianity could have been overturned? No. No, I don't think that was going to happen. I don't think that would ever have been possible. No, Julian gave it the old college try, and it didn't work. Number three, finally, I wanted to know what your thoughts on the issue of trigger warnings in class. Some of my students have been asking me to include them before certain stories with more upsetting content. I'm trying to find a compromise for this, but don't know exactly how to proceed. Well, I'm assuming you're my students in class, so you're a teacher. You've got to yield. I know I can tell from your question that you don't agree with trigger warnings. You shouldn't agree with trigger warnings. They're yet another example of this cotton swath coddling that we're doing, and it's ultimately harmful. Trigger warnings in front of works of literature, especially canonical works of literature, reinforce the attitude, the belief in the minds of young people that the world exists for them, and that all the adaptation, all the accommodation has to happen from the world to them, never from them to the world. So I want everything customized for me. And in addition to the fact that trigger warnings are not necessary, that is also really harmful. It's just another brick in the wall of teaching children that they are the whole point of the whole arc of history. And that's harmful to them, and harmful to society down the line. But whether or not you agree with that, it sounds like you mostly would not ever give trigger warnings, and you shouldn't. But you absolutely should. You must, or you'll get fired. They will win. All it will take is two students telling their parents, lying to their parents. They will be knowingly lying, telling their parents that they felt traumatized because of something you sprang on them without a trigger warning. That's all it'll take is two litigious parents, and you will lose your job. So don't do it. Don't risk it. Just put trigger warnings all over everything if you have to. If that's what the children want, then you have to do it, because the children are backed by the lawyers of their parents, and that they mean business. So don't risk it. Nasser, hey Steve, congratulations. Number one, I've been thinking of reading Elif Shafak for a while now, but I'm not sure which book I should pick. Do you have any recommendations? I'd recommend The Architect's Apprentice. I thought it was really, really good. And number two, I recently read and loved An Unnecessary Woman. I picked it up because of the praise you bestowed on it in one of your videos. It's a really good book, isn't it? Just totally involving. Do you recommend any other of his works? Yes, I do. None of them have quite the charm, quite the magic of that book, I don't think. Also, I would love to know if there are other books that are as deeply steeped in literature as this one. Well, was it the fact that the book was steeped in literature that made it appeal to you, or was it how warm and loving it is? because I have a recommendation, but it's not warm and loving. It is steeped in literature and in the American book world. I love the book. It recently got a paperback reprint. It's The Three Martini Lunch by Suzanne Rindle. Really worth your time. I don't know if you loved An Unnecessary Woman because of the warmth, then you might not like this recommendation. But if you want the bookish stuff on every page, you'll get it there with Three Martini Lunch. And number 3, who is your favorite Indian author? R.K. Narayan is my favorite. Look up Sinomics. Number 1, when you hear Appalachia, which book comes to mind? Unfortunately, the book that comes to mind is Hillbilly Elegy by the new U.S. Senator J.D. Vance. And I say unfortunately, not because the book doesn't have its effective moments, but because of him. He was a normal human being, and now he's a Trump stormtrooper. And no one has actually dug into why that is true, how that happened. As far as I know, there's been no long think piece in like Vanity Fair or something like that about what happened to him. He did not change his opinion on how much you should amortize the loans that are undergirding a new update to an interstate highway. He didn't change his opinion on something like that. He went from being a good person to being an evil person. That's rare that happens in the public light the whole time. He was a famous author before that change happened. So, and his book is set there. So I think about it. I wish I didn't. I wish I didn't. Number 2, like you, I'm 28, and I've noticed that I hardly ever get any constructive criticism at work. I remember in my late teens and early 20s, the best bosses I had were strict and brutally honest. Today, they'd probably be considered abusive. They would be. They would lose their job. Now, most are too scared to say anything, and I feel my professional growth has been slowed because of this. This and the recent Roald Dahl fiasco made me realize that the 21st century seems to want to turn us all to mush. Is this a fair assessment in your opinion? If so, how can young adults get around this? It is entirely a fair assessment, yes. The people who could offer you that hard-edged criticism are afraid you will sue them or accuse them of harassment, not just to the bosses, but to 15,000 people online. So that after a while with review bombing, it gets so that when you Google their name, the first thing comes up is abuse. Nobody wants to face that. Nobody does. So they won't do it. They just won't do it. And your question was, how do young adults get around this? Come over here for wine and calzones. In addition to being very happy to see you, I'll be happy to give you some barbed criticism. William Fett, job well done. Reaching 14K is quite the accomplishment. Is it really? I've mostly just sat here. I've been with you since that bleak and barren Sunday many years ago. What would you consider the best Dickens biography? Peter Ackroyd's. For readability. The scholarship's really good too, but you don't stop reading a Peter Ackroyd book. Also, what is your opinion of the writings of Graham Greene? Thank you. I'm uneven on Graham Greene, but in this case, sometimes I say I'm uneven with an author, and it's because I either haven't delved into them enough or they're not quite on my wavelength. With Graham Greene, I firmly believe, I've read through that huge multi-volume biography, I firmly believe that with Graham Greene, it's because a lot of his books are drastically uneven. I don't think my reaction to him will ever be wholly approving and positive. I wonder if there's a Graham Greene reader out there who is like that. I'd never met one. Randy L. Ray says, I thought of another question. What were your first few videos on this channel like? What topics did you cover then versus now, and how has your approach to booktubing changed over the life of your channel? Topics are all the same. I read 15 or 16 genres, and I read them vigorously. So that has always been true. But somebody pointed out something to me about my earlier videos that I did not realize, because it's your own videos, you don't really see them from an outsider's viewpoint. Somebody pointed out that in a lot of those earlier videos, I'm very soft-spoken. And one of you that pointed out why. This is not a secret. It's that I had 2 old white-faced dogs. And in all of those videos, you can see one of them. You can see my pointer on my right-hand side. And in every one of those videos that I made on this couch, my fat basset hound is underneath my left elbow. She's in the videos. She just very seldom surfaces to be seen by the camera. And they were old, and they slept really, really deeply, the way old dogs do. They embrace their sleep, and they do a lot of it. And I was very gentle with them. I was very soft-spoken with them. I had reached the point where we weren't rollicking buddies anymore like we had been, for 12 years. Instead, I had reached the point where I was their caretaker. And so I spoke quietly. I tended to speak quietly. That is certainly different now. I have a little dynamo of a dog. Frida. Frida, come here. Come here. Come on, you can do it. Come up here, baby. Come on, you can do it. Come on, up you go. Come on, there you go. Good girl. Let's see here. How are we doing for time? Let's do a few more, and we'll finish this up at 30 minutes. Claire Jukes has a barrage of questions. Good Lord. Number one, what did you think of To Paradise by Hanya Yanagihara? These questions don't work in Q&As. I don't have quick, simple, unnuanced reactions to books. Obviously, it's my profession to have long, complicated, nuanced reactions to books. So saying, what did I think of it? What am I going to say to you? I like it. I didn't like it. That doesn't tell you anything. You're going to do that for all of these? Glory by No Violet Boyle, The Mermaid in the Black Conch, Burnt Sugar. What is your opinion of Ben Okri as a novelist? See, these don't work. I have opinions, too many, to answer in a rapid-fire Q&A. Do you have anything? Your third question is longer. Apart from the opening paragraph, the statement that police murders are lynchings and the list of the names of the victims of lynching in the center of the novel, I honestly didn't see anything sociologically or psychologically insightful or well-written about The Trees by Percival Everett. I know you like The Trees and have praised this author. On The Trees, the only Everett book I've read, what am I missing? If you didn't see good writing, then I think you're missing the whole shebang. If you didn't see any, aside from those little tidbits, you found nothing worthwhile in this book, then I don't know, maybe Percival Everett is not the author for you. Because I think the things that you can praise about this book are abundant right from the beginning. If that's all you got out of it and you honestly wonder if there's anything more, then maybe give him a miss for a while. Jack O'Hara says, will we ever be blessed with more life advice videos from you? The streets are in need. This has come up twice now. I wasn't aware that I'd made all that many that my videos are full of cranky old life advice, but I didn't think I'd made any videos like that. Sorry, the beanie is going crazy right next to me. But the life advice videos I've made have all been in response to BroTube videos. I don't make life advice videos on my own because they're not about books. I'm not 100% sure what you're all talking about here. Let's see here. Kevin J.N. says, Steve, if your time was limited for reading, what would you focus on? Would classics take precedent, or would you still do new releases? If reading new releases were not my profession, and my time would be limited, I assume it's because I have a different profession. Let's say I'm going to an office, so I am giving up on reviewing. I'm not writing about books anymore. If that were true, I don't think I would read new releases at all. Even new histories and new biographies. I'm so enamored of rereading stuff, and especially the classics. I would probably stick to the canonical classics and never read anything else. But that's never going to happen, so I don't have to worry about it. Marie Carter says, congratulations, I am interested in the life of Edna St. Vincent Millay. Should I read Milford's biography first, or the recently released diaries? Generally speaking, should diaries or biographies of individuals be read first? The recently released diaries are almost incomprehensible, even if you know about Edna St. Vincent Millay's life. I would leave them aside, get them from the library for the introduction and the notes. But definitely Milford's biography, no, beyond a shadow of a doubt, her biography is one of the great biographies written in the 20th century in English. So you'd want to read it anyway, even if you weren't interested in Edna St. Vincent Millay. But yeah, definitely start with that. Bottle Imp Books, congratulations on 14K. I always struggle to think of a question. Have you read? Only joking. Ooh, yes, we've already had a have you read question. You've previously mentioned that you've traveled a fair bit in the UK. Any memories of Scotland you could share? What's your favorite Scottish writer? Mine is Robert Louis Stevenson, with Alistair Gray a close second. Alistair Gray is a distant other choice on the list. It's Robert Stevenson. I'm such a Stevenson fan. I've read everything and love it so much. And I do have memories of Scotland. Tramping in the wilderness with dogs, but also Glasgow, where I fell in with a really good group of people for a solid week of, well, I imagine there was stray literary conversation amidst the drinking. It was mostly drinking. A gigantic amount of drinking. But lots of fun. Lots and lots of fun. Leo Percara says, hello, Steve. Is Wilmington's Lie by David Zucchino worth reading? Now, see, can the rest of you let Leo Percara be a shining light, an example to the rest of you? Is phrasing a question, is book X worth reading, so hard? Is it so hard to do? Instead of, have you read? This is a perfectly acceptable way to ask this question. But have you read is not a perfectly acceptable way. We should all just phrase it this way. But yes, it is. It is very, very good. Really ground clearing in its way. It really, when you're talking about the Wilmington riot, you have to read this book first. I think it invalidates everything that came before it. Really, really good reading. It was recommended by the comedian Bill Burr, weirdly enough. Do I know the comedian Bill Burr? I don't know that I do. Why is it weird? Is he not literary at all? Uh, Also, when a strange dog asks you to pet him and you do, but looks down without looking at you, is it shyness or am I intimidating the dog somehow? I'm usually squatting and petting her chest while she sits wagging her tail slowly. What the hell? I'm a nice guy. Wagging her tail slowly almost certainly means caution. So, and not looking at you very much means caution. So, is she maybe, distant around strangers or men? Uh, that's not a normal reaction. A dog that is normally socialized will not act that way. So, who is this dog? Do you know anything about them? Do you know, do you greet them at their eye level, or do you greet them first when you're towering over them and then squat down? All sorts. I need to see it. I need to see the body language of the dog in question. But that's a slow wag of the tail. Unless the dog is very, very old, a slow wag of the tail is usually a sign that they're worried about something, disturbed about something. Bass Van Dyke says, "Hey Steve, well, number one, what are some of your favorite places to visit in Mexico?" Well, there are all sorts of natural places that I love, but probably number one place is Mexico City. I was absolutely in love with Mexico City every time I went there. I often wonder when I look back, Mexico City is on a short list of places that I love so much that when I look back, I wonder why I didn't find a nice cheap place and live there for a while. Mexico City is one of those places. Prague is another huge one of those places where I loved it so much that I often wonder why I didn't just stay for a while. Uh, and number two, do you like Borges? What is your favorite story by him? I do. I do like Borges. Yes, absolutely. I think probably my favorite story is The Lottery in Babylon. Uh, but there are others that no, that's probably my favorite one. Some of the others get a little bit didactic. They get a little bit like, "Ooh, look at me, Ma, I'm being really symbolic or whatnot." The Spaminator. I was wondering how long it would take you to make your appearance. Steve, what is the oldest book in your collection? Oh, I have no idea. No idea. It'd be in the mid 19th century, something the 1840s or 50s, something like that. Something I got from the Brattle for $1. But I don't pay any attention, so I have no idea. Marcus Musings, congrats on another milestone, my good sir. Do you still keep in contact with Chris and Giselle Rhodes? They've been gone for years, and I've always wondered what happened to them. Me too. For those of you who don't know what Marcus is talking about, Chris and Giselle Rhodes got me onto BookTube. They had a BookTube channel. Chris Rhodes had a BookTube channel, and he invited me on. I got to know him through his comments field. Turned out he was just a few, 50 miles out to the west. So we met, and I was in his video. I think all of his videos are gone. I think he's darkened his channel. But he put up a video that was titled, "Why Don't You Have a BookTube Channel, Steve?" And I'm in it. We went to the Boston Public Library book sale, and I'm in it. It's actually, if that video is gone, I'll be sorry. Because in that video, for the very first time, I looked at the camera and said, "Hello, BookTube." And the response on that video was unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Loads and loads and loads of comments. People saying, "We want a BookTube channel from this guy." And I saw those comments. Chris showed them to me. And he and Giselle assured me that this is not technologically beyond me. And then I kept saying, "Sure it is. I watched this, but I could never do this." I think I was thinking of the manically edited channels, and I know I can't do that. But not all of them are like that. And finally, they came over to High Cottage and walked me through a video. And it turned out it was very simple. But I believe they're gone. And I have lost touch with them. I don't have any idea where they are or what's going on there. Love to know. Let's see here. Christine Baroni. Hi, Steve. A newbie here. First question. We know you adore the Brattle Bookshop in Boston, but I want to know if you could choose one other favorite bookstore you have visited anywhere. What store would it be? Choose for what? I've loved a lot of really good bookstores. Not all the ones you would think, like the Haunted Bookshop in Iowa City was an institution forever and ever. But I love also the big warehouse bookstores that just have rows and rows of books. Stuff like that, half-price books that are all over the middle of the country they aren't going for atmosphere or character or anything. I love those. I always come out with a bag full of books. And question two, Which author do you read every book they have ever written or hunted down, read from that author? Uh, do you mean, well, there are a lot of authors where I've read everything they've written. I don't think that I have ever, if you mean sort of completionist, where I like an author so much that I think I want to find everything this author has written and read it, I don't think I've ever done that. I tend to make fun of people who do that, good naturedly, but I tend to make fun of them because you've got so many books right in front of your nose, and here you are looking for, Italo Calvino's juvenilia when you've got great stuff that you could read that just is, that always strikes me as a little bit obsessive. Uh, let's see here. Lisa Garrity, will you ever do videos outside again? Walks with Frida, visits to various parts of Boston, etc. Would you consider doing a starter kit for African literature? The content is vast. Where do we start? I have more questions, but I'll save them for 15 Q&A next month. No, there's not going to be a 15 Q&A at all, much less next month. Your questions, I am very much now in the mode that when I'm out with Frida, we are just with each other. I don't bring the world along there for that. So I don't think I would ever make a video walking with Frida. Sometimes I'll take a picture. One time we were walking up in the neighborhood here, and Frida stopped at a stone wall, and she was at the bottom of the stone wall, and at the top of the stone wall, just an arm's length above her head, there was a bright black and yellow garden snake, just sort of sunning there on the. I took a picture of the two of them together in the same frame. She didn't know the snake was there, but otherwise, no, I would not. But videos out and about, like maybe a video at the Brattle. That's by far the number one requested thing, is that I not only take you to the Brattle, I actually did a video where I walk you up Washington Street to the Brattle, and then I stopped the video and just started hunting. But a number of you suggested, could you take us to the Brattle sale lot and talk about some of the books? And I keep meaning to do that. It would totally rely on whether or not the other people in the lot were okay with it, because I don't want to ruin their experience. And as for an African literature starter kit, I would never in a million years do such a thing. Never in a million years. It would get me canceled in about a nanosecond. Tori reads, congrats on 14K. I think you mentioned a few times on the channel that you are not a fan of the usage BCE or CE and prefer BCAD. Could you explain a little about why that is? Yes, I can. Common era and before common era, after common era means what? Jesus Christ is what it means. Jesus Christ is what it means. And the reason for the shift was school marmish censorship, and I hate that. I don't care if it's big or little. I hate it. Somewhere, someone said, well, we shouldn't be this is the Christian church. I mean, so many abuses, such a patriarchy. Christ isn't the be-all and end-all. What about all the people out there in academia who don't believe in Christ? BC and AD was never about believing in Christ. It was noting the most important turning point in Western history. That turning point isn't approximate. Well, what was going on in Judea in AD 30? Oh, well, it could be all sorts of things, right? Isn't that when the Roman coinage was stamped differently? It's the Common Era. A whole bunch of things were happening. No. There's no sense mollycoddling it, especially when you mandate it, especially when you're somehow a bad person if you don't do it. I saw that tinge to this change and hated it right away. And that kind of change is alive and well. It is happening all the time. You are no longer allowed to refer to a Jew. It's a Jewish person. You are no longer allowed to use the word slave, an enslaved person. Whole book. I read 2 whole books on slavery in 2023 alone. The author never uses the word slave, except when quoting someone from back in ye olden days when that was permissible. And you just know that the blue check mark thinking behind that is that if you say that, you are dehumanizing them, meaning using that word means you are a racist. It drives me nuts, as you can tell. It drives me nuts. No, it's BC and AD. Okay, but anyway. Scott Pearson, I really enjoyed A Distant Mirror. Do you have a suggestion of a comparable book covering the 15th century in Europe? E.F. Jacobs wrote a book. I think it's called The 15th Century. It's comparable in its sweep. Just don't expect. A lot of you who read A Distant Mirror for the Steve Tiberius Donahue Book Club noticed that Barbara Tuchman is one hell of a writer. Don't expect that from Jacobs. He's an academic. But the sweep, if you're looking for that, the all-encompassing sweep, all the different major things that were going on, you definitely get that. Oh wait, but we're, oh no, we're way over here. Let's stop this video. I will come back either today or some other day. You won't, you'll see these all together anyway, but I probably won't be dressed the same. But we're gonna wrap this up. We're at 40 minutes. These have both gone long. We'll do another one of these to finish these out as soon as I can. Thank you, BookTube.